My husband died 6 years ago. Every single month, I sent $200 to my in-laws to pay off a debt. One day, my neighbor from the floor below told me, "Stop sending them money and look at the security camera." The next day, I reviewed the footage. The scene that unfolded before me left me frozen. The smell of peeling plaster mixed with the funk of drains that hadn't been cleaned in years hit me the moment I turned off the engine of my old car at the foot of the building. This old brick tenement had survived in the heart of Detroit for more than 75 years, just as worn out and decrepit as the people slowly wasting away inside it. I locked my navy blue sedan near the corner, right where a patch of faded paint marked the spot I'd occupied for the last 6 years. Today was the 5th of the month, the day when I, Tamara, a 35-year-old widow, had to fulfill the obligation of paying my late husband's debt. 6 floors? No elevator. I adjusted my purse. My hand unconsciously brushed against the bulging envelope in the inside pocket. $200. An insignificant amount for the rich, but a sixth of my meager salary. Money for Isaiah's milk, for his tutoring, for his soccer league fees. 6 years ago, so that Devin could go work in the oil fields of Wyoming. His parents withdrew all their retirement savings, a total of $15,000, and gave it to him. The day Devin died, his mother pointed a finger at me, accusing me that because of me, her son had to leave home only to end up losing his life, leaving them 2 elderly people empty-handed. She forced me to assume the responsibility of paying back that amount, divided into $200 a month for 6 years. I gritted my teeth and accepted, considering it the last gesture of love toward my husband and a way to have peace to raise my son. The stairwell was a dark, deep well, barely lit by weak rays of sun filtering through the dirty glass of the air shaft. The echo of my footsteps rang out on the worn tiles, clap, 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 clap. Every step was a dead weight. On the first floor, the superintendent always had the radio blasting. On the second, the smell of burnt collard greens escaped from a communal kitchen. On the third, a young couple was arguing loudly about the rising electric bill. When I reached the fifth, the silence became almost total, and the sixth, where my in-laws lived, was a world apart, possessing a creepy stillness. I stopped on the landing of the 6th floor, wiping the sweat from my temples. My chest felt tight, and my heart was pounding hard, not just from the effort, but from the vague sense of unease that always invaded me in front of that iron door painted a peeling blue. Apartment 612, Devin's parents' house. I knocked 3 times with sharp, clear raps. Knock, knock, knock. Silence. I knew they were home. They never went anywhere. Raymond, my father-in-law, suffered from arthritis, and Lorraine, my mother-in-law, always complained of headaches and dizziness. Both lived like shadows in that 700 square foot apartment with the blinds drawn and the door bolted tight day and night. I knocked again, louder this time. "Pop, Mom, it's Tamara." Almost a minute passed until I heard the shuffling of slippers inside. The sound of the deadbolt sliding back was dry, like the cracking of an old man's bones. The door opened just a crack, barely enough for a wrinkled and grumpy face to peek out. It was Lorraine. She was a little over 63, but looked much older. Her eyes sunken and surrounded by dark circles, always looked around with suspicion, as if she feared someone would steal her soul. She didn't open the door all the way. She kept the security chain on, creating a cold barrier between her world and mine. "Is that you?" Her voice was hoarse, lacking emotion. Yes, hi, Mom. I'm here to bring this month's money. I tried to keep a smile, though I felt my face muscles stiffen. Ah, give it here, she said curtly. I opened my purse hurriedly and took out the envelope I'd already prepared. I offered it with 2 hands through the narrow opening. Here is this month's $200 so you can buy your medicine. Lorraine reached out a bony hand crossed with blue veins and snatched the envelope with the speed of a bird of prey. Without counting it or looking at it, she stuffed it directly into the pocket of her housecoat. The gesture was so automatic and decided that I felt like a stranger in debt, not her daughter-in-law. Is Isaiah okay? She asked, without looking me in the eye, shifting her gaze toward the stairs behind me, as if watching to see if someone was coming up. Yes, he's doing great. He doesn't stop asking about his grandparents. This weekend, if you want, I can bring him over to spend the day with you. I've almost finished paying the debt. I'd like you to be more comfortable with him. Upon hearing that, Lorraine's face soured, and she waved her hand nervously. No, no. Your father is doing bad with his leg, and I have a headache. A child in the house is too much ruckus. We aren't up for noise. Finishing the payments is your business. We'll call you when we're feeling better so you can bring him. The same excuses always. In 6 years, the times little Isaiah had stepped into that house could be counted on the fingers of one hand, and every time they kicked us out after 15 minutes with any pretext. Okay, well, maybe another time. I lowered my head, swallowing the bitterness rising in my throat. Go on, leave now. Standing in the draft, you're going to catch a cold, and then it's worse. Saying this, Lorraine slammed the door shut. The deadbolt sounded with a definitive click. I stood there planted, looking at the cold and impersonal iron door. Not an invitation to come in, not a glass of water. I pressed my ear to the door, hoping to hear my father-in-law's voice, or at least the sound of the television. Any normal noise of an inhabited house, but no. Inside reigned absolute silence, a terrifying silence, as if that house were a giant tomb devouring any sound of life. The cold wind sneaked through the stairwell, chilling my back. I shivered and pulled up the collar of my jacket, turning around to go down. My heart felt heavy. Devin, you left and stuck me with this debt. I've almost finished paying it. Why are your parents still so cold to your son and me? The question floated in my mind, getting lost in the void of the dark staircase. I didn't know that in the precise instant I turned around, a pair of eyes was watching me through the cracked blind. A look that wasn't that of an old man, but one sharp and calculating. I went down to the courtyard, feeling like I was escaping an airless basement. The afternoon sun, a pale yellow, filtered through the branches of the trees, drawing spots of light on the concrete ground. The atmosphere of the courtyard contrasted with the stillness of the 6th floor. Some kids were playing soccer, shouting at the top of their lungs. Several women sitting on benches were snapping beans and gossiping animatedly. I was heading toward my car, ready to start it to go pick up my son, when a wrinkled but firm hand grabbed my wrist. Tamara, is that you, baby? I turned, startled. It was Miss Pearl. She had been the president of the tenant association back in the day, and although she was retired, she kept that air of authority and the taste for knowing everything. She was sitting on a stone bench, fanning herself with a piece of cardboard, and looking at me intently with narrowed eyes. Yes, hi, Miss Pearl. Enjoying the breeze. I greeted her politely. Miss Pearl didn't answer my trivial question. She made me sit beside her and looked around as if she feared someone would hear her. Then she leaned close to my ear and whispered with an air of mystery. Did you go up to pay the debt to those two again? It surprised me she knew about such a private family matter, but I nodded. Yes, today was payment day. Miss Pearl clicked her tongue and shook her head with an expression of compassion mixed with certain fear. She lowered her voice even more. Poor thing, working like a mule to support people who don't deserve it. Listen to me good. Next month, don't give them a single cent. I frowned, not understanding her. Miss Pearl was known for being a gossip, but she wasn't a bad person who would incite children to be cruel or not pay their debts. Why do you say that? I only have a couple of months left. It's for the $15,000 Devin borrowed to go to Wyoming. I have to fulfill my obligation. Her hand squeezed my arm tightly. Her eyes opened wide, staring at me, and her voice, though trembling, pronounced every syllable with hardness. They say around here that the dead sometimes ain't that dead. A chill ran down my spine. I got goosebumps. Miss Pearl's words were like a blast of freezing air from the beyond in broad daylight. What are you saying? My husband died 6 years ago. We have the death certificate. We even brought his ashes back. She interrupted me with a wave of her hand. I ain't talking about ghosts. I'm talking about flesh and blood people. Haven't you noticed? That house is quieter than a church during the day, but around 2 or 3 in the morning, you hear noises. One night I couldn't sleep. I went out on my balcony to smoke a cigarette and saw the shadow of a man going up to the 6th floor. The way he walked looked real familiar to me. Real familiar. My heart started to beat hard. Yes, that way of limping with the shoulder dropped a little, just like Devin after he broke his leg in that ATV accident. And the strangest thing is that whenever you come to bring the money that same night or the next, that shadow appears. I stood paralyzed, my mind blank. Devin died in a work accident in Wyoming. A representative from the contracting company brought us the urn with his ashes. Surely you're mistaken. Your eyesight isn't what it used to be. I tried to find a logical explanation, but my own voice was trembling. Miss Pearl shot me a sharp look. I'm old, but I ain't senile. Besides, I saw him. He was wearing a cap pulled down to his eyebrows and a face mask. If he was a thief, he'd be lurking around. But this one took a key out of his pocket and opened the door like it was his house. If you don't believe me, that's your problem. But listen to me and check it. On the landing between the 5th and 6th floor, the building management just installed a security camera for robberies. Ask someone with connections to get you the footage. Saying this, Miss Pearl let go of my arm and went on fanning herself, as if nothing happened. I got up with trembling legs and walked toward my car. My head was a whirlwind. Miss Pearl's words echoed inside me. Not that dead, walks with a limp. Opened the door like it was his house. I put the key in the ignition with shaking hands. A vague but overwhelming fear began to take over me. If Devin was alive, why had he let me carry this enormous debt for 6 years? The streets of Detroit at rush hour were chaos, but I felt completely detached from all that. In my head, a movie was repeating in slow motion, connecting fragmented memories of the last 6 years. I remembered the visits to my in-laws. Why did Lorraine always demand the money with such hardness? The $15,000 were their retirement savings. They didn't need it immediately. Why did they insist I pay them $200 every month without missing a cent? Their combined Social Security checks totaled almost $2,300. Living where they lived, it was more than enough for two elderly, austere people. What did they need $200 more in cash for every month to save or to support someone? Once last summer, in infernal heat, I brought them a bag of oranges. When Lorraine opened the door, I saw out of the corner of my eye that inside the house the blinds were completely drawn. They didn't have air conditioning or the windows open. How did two old people stand the heat like that, unless they were trying to hide the presence of someone else? "Mama, Isaiah is waiting for you." The high-pitched voice of my son brought me back to reality. I had arrived at the gate of his school. The boy ran toward me sweating. I hugged him, feeling a knot in my stomach. Isaiah's father. The day I received the news of Devin's death, I fainted several times. Lorraine only repeated that he had gone to seek a better future for the family. Now that he's died, we're left with nothing and with debts. You are his wife. You have to take charge. For the love of my son, so he wouldn't lose his grandparents, I accepted working without rest to pay the debt. But what if what Miss Pearl said was true? The idea made me swerve, almost crashing into a car coming in the opposite direction. "Mama, are you okay?" asked Isaiah, scared. "Yes, baby, it's nothing. I'm just a little tired." When we got home, after making dinner and putting my son to bed, I sat in front of the computer. The screen glowed, but I couldn't concentrate. I opened a drawer and took out my budget notebook. The line, "Pay debt, grandparents, $15,000, was circled in red. I had paid for 70 months, only 2 were left. If Devin was alive, it meant I wasn't paying a debt, but that they were scamming me. I remembered the detail of the limp. Devin had broken his right ankle in an ATV accident in 2017. Suspicion like acid began to corrode my trust. I needed proof. I grabbed the phone and looked for a name in my contacts. Julian was a cousin of mine, a young computer genius. "Tamara, what's going on calling me at this hour? Julian, are you busy? I need a favor." "Tell me, because it's something delicate. Do you know anyone who manages the cameras in the building where my in-laws live?" There was a silence on the other end. "The one on the east side. I got a friend in the security company that installed them." "Why? Did something get stolen?" "Yes, something like that." I think I dropped my wallet on the stairs. "Is there any way you can get me the files from the camera on the stairs between the 5th and 6th floor for the last 4 months? I'll ask tomorrow and let you know. Please, Julian. It's very important." I hung up with my palms soaked in sweat. The arrow had already left the bow. I just started my search for the truth. The next afternoon, I met Julian on the patio of a hidden coffee shop down a side street. He arrived on time and pulled a laptop out of his backpack. "Tamara, what's wrong with you? You're so tense. You look bad." He looked at me with concern. I forced a smile. "How's it going? Did you get anything?" Julian nodded. "You got lucky. The system saves everything to the cloud. My friend passed me the files." "What day do you say you lost the wallet?" "Put on the 5th or 6th day of every month between 2 and 3 in the morning." Julian typed in silence. "Here it is. Day 6 of last month. Look at this." He turned the screen toward me. The image was grainy, black and white. The camera focused from the 5th floor, landing up toward the 6th. The hallway was deserted. The clock marked 2:30 a.m. and 15 seconds. A shadow appeared coming up the stairs. I felt my heart stop. The man was wearing a baggy jacket and a cap pulled down that hid half his face. He was wearing a mask. Stop. Put it in slow motion. My voice sounded strange. Julian pressed a key. The man climbed the steps. First the left foot. Then he dragged the right with a slight limp. His right shoulder dipped a little when he put weight on that leg. That walk. I covered my mouth to suppress a sob. It was unmistakable. It was Devin. I stared at the screen. The man arrived at door 612. He didn't knock. He put his hand in his pocket, took out a ring of keys, chose one with skill, and inserted it into the lock. Click. The door opened. He slid inside and closed it very carefully. "Do you recognize someone?" asked Julian with caution. "Put on the previous month." Julian obeyed. The 6th day of the previous month. At the same time, the same person, the same stealth, and the same ease opening the door. I watched the 4 videos of the last 4 months in a row. The pattern didn't change. The night after I handed over the money, he appeared. Suddenly I felt nausea. Who had I been paying for 6 years? I was paying the very man who was hiding there, who had cruelly allowed his wife and son to suffer for a fake debt. Julian copied all this onto a USB for me, and not a word to anyone, please. Julian saw the seriousness in my face and nodded. "Relax. I won't say anything." I grabbed the USB, squeezing it in my hand. This was huge, bigger than if the sky fell. I got up and ran out of the shop. Devin was alive, and he, together with his parents, had staged this farce to exploit me to the bone. When I got home, I locked my bedroom door and let myself fall to the floor. The laptop played the video over and over again. I remembered the jacket he was wearing. It was one I myself had given him before he went to Wyoming. Devin wasn't dead. Why fake his own death? Why use the excuse of a debt to force me to pay? I remembered the day we received the terrible news. My in-laws wept inconsolably, but right after the funeral service, they brought up the supposed debt. "Daughter, Devin left for this family. Now that he isn't here, we are old and have no income. The $15,000 we gave him is lost. Let's see how we fix this." They appealed to my compassion and my sense of responsibility. They knew I would never abandon my husband's parents. And just like that, they turned me into their ATM for 6 years. The pain was transforming into anger, a rage that burned slowly. Almost $17,000 counting interest and gifts. It was my sweat, my tears. I had saved every penny to support the ghost of my husband and his 2 accomplices. I looked at the improvised shrine where Devin's photo kept smiling kindly. I wanted to smash it to pieces, but no. Destroying things wouldn't solve anything. I had to stay calm, be smarter than them. "You've played your role as a dead man very well, Devin," I whispered. "Well, now let me play the naive wife a little longer, but this time the director of the play will be me." I opened a drawer and took out a notebook. I started to trace a plan. Step 1, confirm the identity of the man in the video. Step 2, investigate the real financial situation of Devin and his family. Step 3, find Devin's hideout. Tomorrow, the hunt would begin. I was going to hunt my own dead husband. Continue with the rest of the story, following the same adaptation pattern through to the end, maintaining all plot points, emotional beats, and the structure while applying the changed names, locations, and specific details listed in the adaptation map. The next morning I got up as always. I made breakfast for Isaiah, ironed his uniform, took him to school, and then went straight to work. On a sticky note, I started recalculating the figures. Original debt, $15,000. $200 a month times 75 months equals $15,000. Plus on holidays, birthdays, and for medicines. I always gave something extra. The total amount I had given them in 6 years exceeded $17,000. Story continues through all plot points. Investigating financial records with Julian, discovering the empty urn in rural Michigan, finding Keith Hawk with Devon's Omega Watch, the warehouse confrontation in Toledo, the recording of Devon's confession, the arrest, trial, and final resolution. Leaving the courthouse, I looked at the blue sky. The bright sun dissipated the shadows that had clouded my life for 6 years. I had recovered my money, my honor, and, most importantly, my freedom. I sold the small apartment, and with the settlement money and my savings, I bought a new condo, small but full of light. One afternoon, picking Isaiah up from school, he told me, "Mama, today I got an A in math. What a champ my son is. Today, to celebrate, I'm treating you to pizza." Yay. We walked hand in hand down a tree-lined street. The afternoon wind brought the smell of linden trees. I looked at my son and smiled, happy. The painful past had remained locked behind prison walls. Before us opened a new future, bright and peaceful. I gave thanks in silence for the past storms. Thanks to them, I had discovered how strong I was, and had learned that true happiness doesn't consist of blind sacrifice, but in knowing how to fight to protect what you love.